They kicked the ball around for a while. Then Bean said, "Let's go to the park." He booted the ball down the middle of the street. "Why don't we play here?" said Palmer. But the others were already dashing after the ball. "Let's go to the park." Palmer hated the park. He never played there, never swung on the swings, never slid down the sliding board, never fed the ducks, never watched a softball game. Mostly, especially, he never went near the soccer field, for in 1 month, 4 short weeks after his birthday, the soccer field would become, as it did every year, a place of horror. He walked 4 blocks, and he was at the park. He hoped they would be at the softball field, but he knew they would not. Now they were at the baseball field, or the basketball court, or the tennis courts, or the World War I cannon, or the playground, or the Boy Scouts cabin, or the picnic area. He heard and then saw them at the soccer field, racing and yelping like puppies in the pasture. He stayed at the sidelines, walked along the chalked edges of the field. "Come on, Snots!" they yelled. Kicked the ball his way. "Can't," he yelled, lying. "My leg hurts." To prove it, he threw the ball back. "Just stay here and watch." "I'll just stay here and watch." He hoped they wouldn't be mad at him for not joining him. He loved to see them playing with his birthday present. Each thud of the foot said, "We're kicking your soccer ball. We like you. You're one of us." He wished it could stay like this forever, but it changed. Beans backed up and pointed at Henry and yelled, "There's one!" Henry began flapping his arms and swooping in circles, being a bird. Bean and Muto made their arms like shotguns and pulled their triggers. Pow! Pow! Henry veered, lurched, and tilted and staggered. To Palmer, tall, gangly Henry did not look like a bird at all, but a giraffe with the howling hyenas snapping at his knees. It had long seemed curious contradiction to Palmer that among the 3 kids rollicking on the field, Henry was the tallest, yet also the meekest. Palmer had the sense that he was seeing more than the game, that Henry was not just a member of the group, but also its prey. After a minute or two of lopsided, long-legged careening, Henry flopped to the ground. "Wringer! Wringer!" shouted Beans. "Wringer! Wringer!" shouted Muto. 4 hands clamped around Henry's neck, shaking Henry's head like a rag doll, twisting it this way and that way. "Wringer! Wringer!" Henry's legs flailing, shrieking laughter. "Wringer! Wringer!" Palmer tried to hold the moment there, but it would not stay there. It would not stay. It tunneled back through time, burst up into the same field 3 years before, the first Sunday in August, when the grass was streaked with red and guns were booming and the birds were falling. From the treetops, from the clouds, they plunged to the earth, thumped to the ground, sometimes with a bounce. And some of them lived, flopping drunkenly across the grass until a ringer grabbed it one by the neck and twisted it. And that was that. Beans and Muto were now at each other's throats, rolling, rumbling, rollicking across the grass. Henry woozy, but up now, laughing with the others, then heading off with the others, the 3 of them yelping and kicking the ball through the picnic area. Palmer did not know why he stood there, alone, at the edge of the field, the last place on earth he wanted to be. As the voices of his new friends died away, he was aware of the silence. He looked up. Nothing flew in the sky, nothing called from the trees. For a moment a dragonfly hovered before his eyes, like a tiny helicopter, then darted off. That was all, silence and stillness. He ran. He caught up with them on the playground. They were diving headfirst down the sliding board, stacked all 3. "Come on, Snots, make it 4, Beans called. Palmer and Mother had told him about the sliding boards way back when they started bringing him to the playground. Hold tight on the rail, and if you climb up the ladder, no sliding down stacked, no sliding down head first. But this was a new time. He wasn't with his mother. He was there with the guys. His guys. "Snots, come on!" He joined them down the ladder as the stack arranged itself. He wound up on the bottom, and he could not take deep breaths. He could feel the shape of his belt buckle in his stomach. He could smell the tiny slide, and down they went. And for a 2-second trip, Palmer felt something more than the thrill of the plunge. He felt his friends above riding him, clutching him, depending on him. He had slid down about 1,000 feet long. He would have carried them happily. And then they went spilling off on the end like potatoes dumped from a sack. Again and again they rode the slide, taking turns on the bottom. The first time Beans was on the bottom, he clamped the slides halfway down and stopped, sending the rest of them rumbling to the ground. A lady called from the swings, "Hey, you kids, no stacking!" Beans pinched his nose and honked, "Hey, you're old man!" as they went flying down again. Nito and Henry honked too. Finally, Palmer did it, his back to the lady, pinching his nose, getting it out. "Yeah, you're old man!" just before the giggles came, forgetting he hated the park. Then Beans was pointing from the top seat, shouting, "Look!" Everyone followed the pointing finger. The kid leaning against the monkey bars, a big kid, chewing on a beef stick. Nito gasped, "Farquhar!" Farquhar was a legendary ringer, the coolest, most feared kid in town. Why was he staring at a bunch of 9-year-olds? Dean called to Farquhar. "Here he is." He was pointing to Palmer. "The birthday boy." Suddenly Palmer understood. His birthday was no secret to Farquhar. He was about to receive the ultimate honor, the ultimate test, the treatment. Farquhar started walking and they followed. Nobody gave the treatment like Farquhar. Palmer knew a new kid had to have his arm in a sling for a week after. Yet Farquhar himself, maddeningly unpredictable. Some birthday boys he seemed to totally ignore, passing them on the street as he usually did, as if they were doing, or that they were dog due. But on the other hand, he had been known to walk halfway across the town, knock on the door, and say sweetly to the surprised parent, "I hear there's a birthday boy in here." Some kids turned into quivering zombies, and they kept their birthdays as secret as possible. In school, if their teacher announced their birthdays, they denied it, claiming it was a mistake. They refused to have parties. They stayed inside their house for months. They would not bump into Farquhar. But there was another side to it, too. There was the honor. There was the respect you got from other kids, the kind of respect that comes from soldiers who survive great battles. There was a pride in yourself knowing you passed the test, more dreadful or dreaded and painful than the 10 teachers together could give. Farquhar led the World War I cannon, led them to the World War I cannon. The cannon was a small grassy hill overlooking the park. Farquhar approached Palmer with the end of one finger, and he pushed up the last segment of the beef stick into his mouth. "Left or right?" he said. Palmer had not known he would get a choice. "Left? No, right." "Make up your mind." "Left." "Left it is, Farquhar." Farquhar rolled up Palmer's left shirt sleeve to the top of his shoulder so that his entire arm was bare. Farquhar studied the arm for a long time, pressing, feeling like a doctor. Finally, he said to Beans, "Okay, put your finger right here. Don't move it till I say." Palmer felt Beans' fingertips on his arm, on the bony part of halfway between the elbow and the shoulder. Farquhar spat on his own fingertip, rubbed the tip in the dirt with the resulting mud. "Move." He made the mark on Palmer's arm where Bean's finger had been. At this point, it was rumored some kids wet their pants. "Blindfolded?" said Farquhar. Palmer looked over a peaceful scene. People playing, walking in the park in the trees, children shout, "No!" he said, but nothing came out of his throat. He turned to sand. He coughed, swallowed, and tried again. "No." "Okay," said Farquhar, "don't move." "And don't look," thought Palmer. That's what he had always heard on the street. If you ever get the treatment, don't look. By the time Farquhar bunched up his fist and struck the knuckle of his middle finger, it was hard as a ball on a peen hammer and sharp as a spear. Bad enough you had to feel it. Don't make things worse by touching or watching it coming. Farquhar took position. Palmer, left side, braced off a step, spread his legs, planted his feet firmly. He crouched, lowering himself. Palmer felt a gust of beef stick breath. Beans and Muto looked directly in front of you, grinning, as if they were watching somebody about to a hot foot. Palmer wished he had asked for the blindfold. Henry was off to the side. Palmer took a quick look and wished he hadn't. Henry was not grinning. His eyes were wide as a hangman's noose. Palmer turned back to find Beans' grin wider than ever. Beans had the most incredible teeth Palmer had ever seen. Beans swore he had not brushed them since the big ones came in. At one time, another, Palmer had seen every color in the crayon box on Beans' teeth. The major color was a dull yellow-brown fringed with green. Beans and Muto shouted, "One!" And the first rap hit, and Palmer understood instantly the genius of Farquhar. He understood that Farquhar somehow knew that his body was better than he himself did, that there was no need to rear back like a baseball pitcher or bring the whole fist, that when the perfect spot was found, the tip of the knuckle, fired from a mere 6 inches away, was enough so that Palmer's whole body was sucked into suddenly a new sinkhole into his arm. But Palmer kept his mouth shut. "Don't scream." The street had always said, if you do, you'll get an extra. 2! Tears sprang to Palmer's eyes, smearing grins from Beans and Muto. "Don't cry," the street said, "you'll get 2 extras. 3! Palmer bit his lip and screamed inside his head, bashed his chairs, flung himself on the walls of the barricade. "Stop, stop, stop! 4! He takes his time. He wants this to be over, but he goes real slow. Henry turned his back. 5, 6, Mommy! 7, 8, 9. "What happened to your arm?" Palmer's mother was lifting his shirt sleeve and asking the question he did not want to answer. "I said, what happened?" "The treatment," his father said, coming into the room. He muffed Palmer's hair. "Right, big guy?" Palmer nodded, even though nodding seemed to hurt his arm. "Right?" His father inspected the spot. He whistled softly and nodded gravely. 9 hard ones, huh?" "Right?" Palmer stood a little taller. He felt as though his father had just pinned a medal on him, but his mother's voice was strained. "What are you talking about? What treatment?" His dad spoke for him. "It's been a tradition for years around here. On your birthday, you get knuckled once for every year old you are. It happened to me plenty." She sneered. "That doesn't mean it has to happen to him." She lifted the sleeve again. "Look at that. Look." "It's a bruise," said his father calmly. "It goes away. He's okay. Right, big guy?" Was he okay? His arm wasn't okay. It was killing him. But what did he know about the rest of him? Give him an extra," Beans and Muto shrieked. He was crying. "He's crying." But Farquhar said no. It was just eye tears. Everybody gets them. And when he had carefully, daintily, really pulled Palmer's shirt sleeve down, "Happy birthday, kid," and walked off. That was the moment Palmer loved Farquhar. Was he okay? "Sure," he said, and he gave a little chuckle just to prove it. "Well," said his mother, aiming her voice somewhere beyond the room, "I'm not okay. We had those hoodlums in here for his party." "Beans?" said father. Palmer gladly answered. "Yeah, Beans was here, Muto and Henry." His father wagged his head. "He's a pip, that Beans." "Hoodlums," his mother went on. "And they don't even like Palmer that much. They never pay any attention to him. They play with him. They never play with him." "They do now," Palmer protested. "They were just waiting till I was 9. His mother ignored him. "He invites them. But little Dorothy Gruzik he doesn't even invite," she bore down on him. "Why not Dorothy? She's a girl. She's your neighbor. She's one of your best friends." Palmer laughed out loud. Sometimes his mother tried to make something come true simply by saying it. She is not, he told her bluntly. If she didn't live across the street, I'd probably never see her. She invites you to her parties. Palmer was fed up. Why did his mother have to go on the warpath just when everything was so great in his life? He blurted out, "She has a fish face." His father laughed. His mother's eyes went wide, and she abruptly changed the topic. "And the nickname?" she said to his father. "You should hear the nickname they gave our son for his 9th birthday, the hoodlums." She tapped Palmer on the shoulder. "Tell him." "Snots," said Palmer. It was already beginning to feel like his. "Snots?" his dad echoed. "Now, what kind of name is that?" said his mother. "Where did that come from?" Palmer shrugged. In truth, he had no idea. Beans gave out the name. His own obviously came from his appetite of cold baked beans out of a can. Any time, day or night. Muto, a mystery. There was no dog in Muto's life, and Palmer knew of. So Henry, that sounded more like a real name than a nickname, but Palmer couldn't imagine Beans letting someone's real name stand, so Henry had to be someone else's too. Seeing that no answer was coming from Palmer, his mother gave up and walked off, muttering, "Doesn't have a good sense he was born with." "Well, snots," said his father. "Sorry I didn't make it to the big party. Here's a present if you think you can stand another one." He reached up to the dining room hutch and pulled down a gift-wrap package. Palmer tore off and revealed an old, frayed shoebox. He gasped. He knew what it was. He knew it was coming, but he couldn't believe it. He lifted the lid. "Your soldiers. Yours now," his father said. They were 21 toy soldiers. They were made of lead, which made them places showed through olive green paint, and they were 2 inches tall, and they were very old. Their helmets were shallow, like soup bowls. They had first been played with by Palmer's great-grandfather, then by his grandfather, and then his father. Palmer had played with them many times, but only with his dad's permission. He had always thought of them as the most valuable things in the house. His dad kept them in a shoebox behind the suitcase in the back of the closet. "That is," his father added, "if you promise to take care of them and pass them on to your own son someday." Palmer could only nod in wonderment. "I can. Can I keep them in my room?" "You sure can." That night in his room, Palmer debated where to hide the 21 toy soldiers. He chose the high shelf in his closet, which he could not reach without standing on a chair. He had to carry the chair to reach up to the with his right hand. His left arm was useless. His fingertips tingled. At dinner, he had to let it just plop on the table and stay there. His mother kept glaring at it. Sometimes his arm felt nimbly, as if it had been sleeping on it, but it just mostly hurt. He found that if he kept his mind busy, he didn't notice that it hurt so much. So he read a book, watched TV, inspected his parents' thought of the day. What a day! New birthday, new friends, new feelings of excitement, and pride and belonging. His mother was wrong about the guys never playing with him. He had a lot to overcome, that was all. Being the youngest, the shortest, the most unusual first name, he took a lot of teasing there. But that was all over now. He fell back on his bed. He grinned at the ceiling. Life was good. While brushing his teeth that night, Palmer looked at his face in the mirror and suddenly began to cry. He cried so hard he could not finish brushing. He ran to his room, shocked and angry at his unexpected turn of the perfect day. Sobbing loudly, gasping for breath, he plunged into his bed and smothered his face in his pillow. He was not aware of the turning the ceiling light off and the night light on. He was not aware that he ever stopped crying. In his sleep, a voice echoed down the dark barrel of a cannon. "You have run out of birthdays." In the morning, he awoke suddenly to a flutter of wings.